This is the PowerPoint for Writing 5650, Writing for Publication. In this PowerPoint, I'm going to talk a little about the syllabus and then talk a little about the assignments for the first week and then show you my writer's resume. So I'll probably go a little faster than you can read on this PowerPoint, but again, this is just to accompany what you should be doing, which is sitting down and carefully reading the syllabus. And so up at the top here, I have my contact information. Those are my office hours when I'll be actually working in my office at Georgia Southern. So if you're on campus, feel free to stop by, or if you want to call me, my office telephone, you can do that at that time. In terms of otherwise getting in touch with me, I prefer that you use the folio email to contact me. That just helps me to keep everything, all my communication lines better organized. If you really feel a need to, another really good way to get in touch with me is just to use my tgiles@georgiasouthern.edu address. I am online quite a bit. I think you can expect me to get back in touch with you within 24 hours, often a lot more quickly than that if I happen to be online. And I am online quite a bit. I'm teaching 2 courses entirely online, and another course face-to-face. The texts, there may have been some confusion about the texts. I, at one point, kind of getting over a cold this week, but I had had the title of the Henson text incorrect. It's Writing for Publication, The Road to Academic Advancement. So be sure you get both of these. The bookstore does not have them. You'll have to buy them online. Amazon has Kindle copies if you prefer to go that route, or you can get physical copies if you like, and we won't start using them until the second week of class, but we are going to go ahead and get started this week with doing some reading and taking a practice quiz and using the discussion board. And there will be some required articles to read for some modules, such as the first one, and I'll talk more about that in just a few minutes. But before we go on from the books, the first one, we're going to start actually with reading a couple of chapters from the Kenneth Henson book, Writing for Publication, The Road to Academic Advancement. It might sound like a book for an introductory writing course in college, and yes and no. No, it's not for a first-year composition class. His audience, I think, is primarily graduate students. And there's a chapter that we're not going to read, but that you might read if it's relevant to your needs now or sometime in the future on picking a dissertation topic, for example. So his audience is graduate students. And a lot of what he has to say about writing for journals has a wider application to other types of writing that you might do for publication in journals and so forth. So we're going to read a couple of chapters from Henson. There's one about, there's some information about writing query letters, and we'll have that assignment that you'll be working on. And you'll be able to see a good place to get an overview of what we're doing is to go on Folio and click on the course schedule module. Now, there's a couple of things on Folio. There's a course schedule that gives you a list of upcoming assignments, which I think is a little confusing. What you want to go to is the course schedule module. When you click on that, it'll take you to another link that you'll then click on for the course schedule, and what you'll get at that point will be an overview of what we're doing week by week, when the assignments are due, and so forth, when one module begins and another module ends. And that's very important because you want to get the discussions for each module done during that module, as well as the quiz for that module done during that time. So after we read those couple of chapters in Henson for Module 2, then we'll spend the next 4 modules reading Gail Poole's Faint Praise, The Plight of Book Reviewing in America. And when you get done with that, you're going to write a book review. And so you need to start thinking today about what book you want to write a review of. And it can be any type of book that you like. If you have any doubt about whether or not a book would be appropriate, you can see me. I don't want you writing a review of Charles Dickens' A Tale of Two Cities or something like that. I do want you to get something fairly recent. I'm not trying to stretch your budget or anything like that, because certainly you could get, the libraries have lots of new books on them, not just your university library but also the public libraries. The book you write a review of, it could be a novel or it could be nonfiction. It could be conceivably something that you have read for another class that you think that you would like to write a review of as you learn more about book reviewing. And as I'll be talking about when we start talking about the book reviews, that writing book reviews is a good way to introduce yourself to a number of different types of audiences. One can be the local literary scene, if that's what you're interested in getting involved in, or it could be a professional scenario of some sort, especially if you're thinking about going on to if you're thinking about going on for a graduate degree. And a good way to become involved professionally in your field is to volunteer to write book reviews. And of course, it varies quite a bit in how easy it is to do that. In English language studies, it's fairly easy, for example, for graduate students to get book review assignments. In history, you have to apply to, for the good journals anyway, to get a book to review. It's also a good way to get free books too, conceivably, which I always like. But this book that Poole has written, it also introduces you to what happens when a book is published and what your role might be as an author as well. And so I think it's valuable in that sense too. Both of these books you will have to buy them online. The reason for that is they both have recently gone out of print, and I don't think that's any reflection on the value of either one of these books. It's more has to do with the reality of publishing, especially academic publishing, which is feeling the same types of crunches, probably more so, as all publishers are feeling these days, which we'll be talking about this semester as well. But neither one of these authors wanted their books to go out of print, and so what they've done is they've taken them to Amazon, and they've had Kindle books made out of them. And so you can get a Kindle book if you want, or you can buy a used copy if you want to wait. As I said, we're going to get a couple of chapters from Henson out of the way right away, and then we'll be reading in Poole for a while. But the Poole text is really cheap as a Kindle book. I don't know how you feel about doing that. There is an app that you can download from Kindle now that is free, that will play on a variety of devices. So, okay, and both of these authors are still, as I said, they're actively involved with their books and keeping them available to the public. And by using these, it does cut down some of the costs for you as well. Okay, so here's the course description and the catalog. My assumption with you're taking this course is that you are a writer and that you're interested in publishing your work. And so that's what we're going to be dealing with in this course. We will be doing some of these things with, we deal with a lot of the revision and editing and so forth. You'll be posting your work on the Folio discussion board and downloading your classmates' work. We'll be doing this with the book review and the query letter, not with the final project. But you will have an opportunity to work through with revision and editing in that sense. Okay, so here how your assignments are broken up. You can see that the query letter and the book review are each 10% of your grade, I had started out originally with just the book review, but then it seemed it was doing that was putting too much work at the end of the semester, so it really, in a lot of ways, made more sense to start out with the query letter, because very often to get an editor to let you do a book review, one way you start that process is by writing a query letter. And it also spaces out the work over the semester. The final project, I'm open to any number of things that you might want to do. But it could be a research paper on something relevant to what we've been studying. You could, if you wanted to read more about book reviews, you could certainly, and find some specific focus for book reviews, you could do that for a final paper or some other topic that we deal with, writing for journals or creating a book, a proposal for a book or something like that. Or you could do a book proposal itself, especially for a real book that you may actually be working on, or for an imaginary book that you would like to write someday, or something like that, or perhaps that you've done some work on that you see that you'd like to pursue sometime in the future in more detail. You can get an idea of what doing a book proposal is like. With the module quiz average and the discussion board participation, you do need to complete the module quizzes and the discussion board. There'll be 2 discussions for each module. You do need to complete those during the time set up for the module. And they are in 2-week increments. So, and this is part of attending the class. We're not going to have anyone coming in and doing everything in the last week or the last 2 weeks of classes. I think that a course taught entirely online should, as much as possible, be like a face-to-face class. You wouldn't do that in a face-to-face class. No one's going to do it in this online course either. So be sure to do your work, do it during the time that it's set up for you to do it, and be sure to get it done. Now, if you're sick or something like that, and you have documentation from a doctor, that's different. Or if you're involved in something related to a school project that might cause you to need a little extra time, that's something that we can work with. But again, I need documentation to be fair to everybody. When somebody tries to do this doing the whole class in the last week or 2 weeks of the semester, whether a student who might do that might realize or not, that student is cheating himself or herself, really, of the worth and the value of the course, and also cheating the other students. You can see here that discussion board participation is a major part of your grade, and what you'll be doing with the discussion board participation is you'll be writing, for each module, you'll be doing 2 posts of around 200 words each on some type of question that I'll pose. And then you'll respond to 2 of your classmates. And if somebody doesn't do that, they're not only cheating themselves, they're also cheating the other students of what they may have added for the class. Because you have to think about how a class actually occurs, and I think this becomes clearer in the online environment. I create this class by picking out books, creating a syllabus, doing these narrated PowerPoints, writing quizzes, writing the discussion board, the directions for the discussion board posts, and so forth. And you create the class by responding to the discussion board. And so it's class participation. It's like the discussions we might have in a face-to-face class. And somebody who does it all at the end of the semester is cheating other students too, and also really kind of getting something for that they're not really trying to get a grade they're not entitled to, though it shouldn't surprise you to know that people who try to do that often are not successful anyway. Okay, so yeah, the discussion board participation is very important, and then you'll be doing a narrated PowerPoint at the end of the semester where you'll report on your final project, and it too will be posted on the discussion board. With these narrated PowerPoints, I'll have one for each module, and what right now they're located on a site called AuthorStream, and this is where we were told to put them when we first started. The university got involved in online education about 7 or 8 years ago, and they didn't want us putting our narrated PowerPoints up on the Georgia Southern folio, or we were using WebCT back then, whatever it was. And the reason was because it took up so much space. But I think that they've made a change to that, and I'll be going to a workshop and to find out more about that. And I think that'll be good because it'll help with when there are technical issues with AuthorStream. Though I did have some complaints about AuthorStream last semester, but every time I checked but once, it was working. So I don't know what the problem was. But anyway, if I can get those posted on the Georgia Southern website, I'll be doing that this semester. For right now, we're working on AuthorStream probably through the end of the month. When you do submit something to the, such as the query letter, the book review, or the final project, it does need to be written in Microsoft Word. If you happen to use OpenOffice, that's fine. I keep OpenOffice on my computer too. I use Word because I prefer it for grading, but if you use OpenOffice, you know that it's free, of course, and so I don't have a problem with having that and then taking it and saving it as a Word file. What you can do is save it as a rich text format as the extension RTF on the end of your file if you're using OpenOffice, and that opens beautifully on PCs or on Macs, as well as OpenOffice. Okay, so academic dishonesty. I do expect academic honesty, and I do use the automatic plagiarism detecting service, and also check student work myself, so if there's any doubt at all. So be aware of that. Do your own work, and you will have some opportunities to revise your query letter and your book review anyway to get a better grade if you like. I do expect you to actually work on actually revising it and not just adding or subtracting commas. That won't get you anywhere, but making a significant difference, actually improving your work, can help you to improve your grade on those two assignments. And let's see, a third item that doesn't really apply to this class, but okay, we've talked about attendance and what that means for an online course that you're participating throughout the semester and getting your work done by the conclusion of each module. And this talks a little bit about the electronic grading. I use the reviewing feature in Word, if you're familiar with that, when you get your papers back. And I'll be showing you how to do this because you'll also be using these features to respond to your classmates' work when we post material on the discussion board. And I also write a comment at the end as well. And you'll be uploading your work to the discussion board, getting responses from your classmates, and then revising based upon what you think you can use from that. You don't have to do exactly what people tell you to do, but it's feedback on your work before you turn it to me for my response. Then when you upload it for me, you'll upload it to the Dropbox on Folio. And the narrated PowerPoints we've talked about, and you'll be doing one as well. You don't generally, you can if you have a headphone with a microphone attached to it, that's what I use, and I got one at Big Lots for like $5. a lot of computers these days have microphones built into them. They really kind of vary in quality, but it's certainly possible to get a cheap one that will work pretty well. Okay, so we've talked a little about the discussion board as being a place where you participate in the class and all that sort of thing. With the 200-word post, the only requirement there is that it be around 200 or at least 200 words. I've resisted the idea of giving, A, B, C, or 1, 2, 3, or what have you, any type of point systems, because the point is to have discussions. And it's okay to be wrong occasionally, that to perhaps misinterpreted something, and then you're corrected by your classmates, and that's good for them, for them to be able to articulate why somebody is wrong. I'm not really trying to encourage you to argue or anything like that. I'm certainly not trying to encourage you to be rude to each other. You should remember when you disagree with someone to be polite, and we can certainly all do that, I think. But we are trying to have some type of asynchronous discussion. And the thing about online education that there's certainly a lot of controversy about it. What testing shows, like when they give objective tests and multiple choice tests on the same material to someone who's learned about it through an online environment and someone who's learned about it through a face-to-face teaching situation, is that there really isn't any significant difference between the two. And I think that online education is like any other class, in that some students will get a great deal out of it and some students won't get anything out of it. I think students are more likely to fail online courses than face-to-face courses, but that has a lot to do with participation, with backburnering the online course and meaning to get to it and then never getting to it and then just giving up and taking the F in the course. So again, don't let that happen to you. With the discussion board, I will from time to time be giving you a working grade, like about every month. I won't do it in January, but probably about halfway through February, at a break in a module, I'll post what your current grade is. And so let's say, for example, just to pick a number out of the air, we've done 10 discussion board posts by that time, and you've done them all, then you'll get 300 points. Now let's say, for example, you didn't do the next 10, so now we've got 20, but you've only done half, then your grade would drop from 300 to 150 points. And so your grade can go up and down. Though what my experience has actually been is that students tend to stay where they are when they get that first grade. And some people can certainly go up. But typically students who start out strong stay strong, and those who start out weak stay weak. Don't let that happen to you. Start out strong and stay strong. Do all your work. Okay, this continues talking about the discussion board, and I've talked a little bit already about your doing responses to your classmates' work. And I'll have some material for you to look at that will show you in more detail how to use the reviewing feature. I'm not talking about track changes. I don't want you to use that. I don't want you to rewrite your classmates' work. What I want you to do is to comment on what they've written. And in the second paragraph, one thing to remember, this is true in general about the discussion board, is that when it says something is due by 11:59 p.m. February 3rd, what happens at that time is that at 11:59 on February 3rd, the discussion board for that assignment locks, and that means that nothing else can be uploaded at that time. So get your work done and be sure you get it done before that time, because you're not waiting for me to remember to do something. I set it up so that it shuts down at 11:59 p.m. So, and I do that so that there's no, I didn't know which 12 o'clock you were talking about. So it's 11:59 p.m. And that applies to just regular discussions, not just when you're doing peer responses to writing assignments. And what the due dates here has to do with written work such as your query letter, your book review, and your final project. It doesn't have anything to do with the discussion board posts, the full grade letter cut for each day late. So this final project, I've talked a little bit about that. It could be you could pick a topic that we've looked at and that you want to learn more about, or something. It could be something we haven't talked about that you might want to learn more about. You might want to learn, for example, more about how to promote yourself on social media, as an author. And I've seen some articles like that. I need to pick one, and I'll be signing and that'll be an example of an extra article we'll be reading this semester. But there's certainly more than one article has been written, and so that could be a research paper, that if you like. And I've mentioned a couple of here: the review of the literature, which is a good academic paper that graduate students often have to write about a topic that they're then going to write in more detail about for a master's thesis or a doctoral dissertation. And then a review essay is a little bit different. It says that here you find a disagreement in the field on some type of a topic, and then you join that argument as a voice in it. That doesn't mean that you have just two sources. You should have, for a 2,000 word paper, I don't like to assign a number, but it needs to be thoroughly researched. And if you have you have an argument going on, then generally there's going to be more than two people arguing, or at least other people commenting on what the two people are arguing about. So again, I don't like to assign a number of sources that you have to have, but two would not be sufficient for a review essay. And of course you want to use documentation, MLA or APA, either one is fine. If you want to use Chicago, don't make something up. Or I've seen more of that with students using internet sources. There are ways you deal with internet sources with MLA, APA, and Chicago. Look it up. It's available online for free. The online writing lab, or the icon they use for that, is an owl. OWL at Purdue is a good source. That's what I use pretty often. Okay, we talked about the narrated PowerPoint. The quizzes are something that we need to talk about. Now, the quizzes you can take during the module, you can take the quizzes more than once. However, most or all of the quizzes will have a short answer question. You cannot retake the quiz until I grade the short answer question. Now, let me rephrase that. You can retake it, but I will only grade the most recent one. So what you should do is take the quiz, wait until I grade it, and I look at the quizzes every day, especially like during my office hours. That's something that I do, but also on days when I don't have office hours, I also look at them, usually sometime in the afternoon. But after I have graded your short answer, then go back and take it again. And the reason that I do that is that it keeps people, if someone takes a quiz and it has 10 questions on it and they get a 20 the first time they take it, that means they probably guessed. And so that person can go back and look at the quiz and keep eliminating incorrect answers. They get a 20 on the first one, a 40 on the second one, a 60 on the third one, and so forth and so on, until they get a 100. And they won't get a very good score that way. But what I do is, in a case like that one, I look just at the most recent score. So let's say, for example, that the the person had guessed their way up to an 80, and the short answer question was worth 20 points, and I gave them a full credit for it, then they would have, but all their grades would be 20, 40, 60, 80, 100, and so that would not average out to be a very good grade. What you need to do is take it, wait until you get until I've graded it, and then you can retake it again. So I also don't allow multiple scores of the same score. Again, this is to differentiate between people who are guessing their way to an A, so to speak, or trying to, and people who actually do the reading, study a little for the quiz, and then take it and perhaps score as an 80 the first time or something like that, and then retake and score 100, and then that averages out as a 90. So, and then of course the way that we get that I think it's worth 200 points is that I average that each of the quizzes, which are on a scale of 0 to 100, and whatever the average is, I multiply that by 2, and that's your 20% for the for your grade. And when I see multiple 90s, I just, for example, or whatever they might be, I just delete them. But other scores I just leave in. So again, this is to award the students who are actually doing the reading, and it does not reward those who are trying to guess their way to an A. Okay, so here's the first week's assignments. Don't let this PowerPoint substitute for sitting down and reading the syllabus and letting me know if you have any questions. There's an introductory discussion board post where you tell us a little bit about yourself. Then you want to read the Gloria Steinem article, Sex, Lies, and Advertising, and it is on Folio under Content for Module 1. It'll open as a PDF, and you read that, and then there's a quiz based upon it, and then there's a discussion that you'll do, which I actually haven't quite yet written yet. I know what I'm going to write, but I haven't written it yet. Will in a few minutes. And this article is about her problems that she had with starting the magazine Ms. back in the early 70s. And it had to do with problems that she had with advertisers. And what's interesting about this is that this is a problem that magazines have. I mean, not just a women's magazine. And when I say just, I mean not a magazine in this one particular category, but even broader general news magazines. If they do an expose on something that's going to shed bad light or bad press on an advertiser, that advertiser may very well leave. And so they publish an article, maybe a 1,500-word article, that may cost them hundreds of thousands of dollars, literally. And so this is a kind of an interference with freedom of speech, in a sense. And in this case, Steinem had a particular problem because she was trying to start a magazine for women that wasn't focused on as much on clothes and makeup and stuff like that, like so many of the women's fashion magazines are. And so it's but it is something that all magazines have to deal with to some extent. And of course, we're living in an era when, according to who you talk to, either the internet has revolutionized the magazine industry or it's destroyed it. It hasn't quite destroyed it, but it's definitely changed it. So anyway, there's a quiz based upon that article to give you an idea what the quizzes are like. Most of the quizzes are usually multiple choice, usually 9 multiple choice questions, or perhaps 1 or 2 fewer, and a short answer question where you would be best off writing, like a paragraph, or if you want to write a short essay, that's fine. There's plenty of room. And there's also, with that particular question, there's another one, there's a true-false question on that one because I occasionally do those, and then there's also a one where you have more than one choice that you make to get the full credit. And And just notice that that one, for example, is worth 20 points. So, because you have to pick more than one answer, so I made it worth more points than the others, which are worth like 10, and then the short answer is worth like 20 points. So, and with the short answer, I also posted another short article in there that you'll be able to see right there in the quiz. I don't usually do that either, but it is something that I do from time to time. So I thought I would show you that. In order to read that article that's embedded in the quiz, you'll have to use the slide bar to slide it back and forth so that you can read it. Okay, so after that you'll take the quiz, and then there's a discussion based on the Steinem article that I will write in a few minutes. So I thought I would show you my resume, and this is not my entire resume that I use. Like I keep one up to date all the time because, for example, I have to do a yearly report, and they want an updated resume that'll have any publications that I may have published during the year or any conference presentations I might have done. I usually do anywhere from 1 to 3 in an average year. So, but here at the top is there's my education. I left that here because these are part of my credentials as a writer. I have a BA in English with a concentration in writing. So most of my coursework for my major was from writing courses. And then in my master's, I focused on professional and technical writing, and I've had some experiences. I interned with a telecommunications giant at the time called Northern Telecom for my master's program, and then I interned with my PhD program with Medtronic, which makes medical technology equipment. They actually pioneered they created the first pacemaker for the heart, and that was part of my PhD work. So I had a research fellowship for them as well. And here's some of my publications on my resume. I list them as academic publications. You can see the first and the third one. These are book reviews that I've written fairly recently. I've written more book reviews than this, actually, for classes and also for newspapers. I just don't happen to have all of them anymore because these are the ones that, or in general, these are the publications I think are the most relevant. But I do have a couple of book reviews. One that was published 3 years ago, and the other one, the one up at the top, it says in press. That was scheduled to be published in 2019. So, and I have let's see, a couple of other articles. I have a long relationship with the Journal of Technical Writing and Communication, going back to actually my first article published there in 1990. And you can see here there's also listed a chapter from a book that I co-wrote with a couple of my colleagues here at Georgia Southern. And the one at the bottom is my book, which was actually my doctoral dissertation that I then revised quite a bit. And I'll be showing you the proposal I had to write for the publisher in order for that to be, for them to look at the manuscript. Actually, I had to do a proposal. And here's some others. Again, another article I worked on with a colleague, and another one published in a book, and 3 more journal articles. I started teaching full-time in 1986, and I taught full-time from 1986 to 1999, and then by that time I was here at Georgia Southern. I took a leave of absence and went to the University of Minnesota to work on my PhD. But what I was doing in terms of publishing between 86 and 99 was poetry. And I actually had a poem that was republished a few years ago. It was the last. I still write poetry, but I haven't published any in a long time. I just haven't been sending it out. It actually takes it's just more time that you have to have, and I'm pretty swamped right now with teaching and with my scholarly work that I do to support the work I do in technical communication. But I did the last poem that I published in 2000. I had a request to republish it in 2015, which is out of the blue. This Jane Hunter is actually a pediatrician in California who had put together a book. It was a collection of poems, and there's like some writing in between each poem about different situations, and there'll be a poem, and it was a book she was giving to her patients. You can see there the well-versed parent poetic prescriptions for parenthood, and it was originally published in a book called Essential Love, which was kind of unusual. I saw the ad in a journal called Poets and Writers, and I sent in this poem, and then I got a letter back about it, and I thought it sounded a little fishy, like it might be a vanity press where you pay to have your work published. And I asked the guy who was the poet here in our department. He said he had not heard of this publisher, Poetry Works. But what it turned out is that the woman who was editing this collection was an instructor at a college in the Northeast, and she was trying to think of ways to make extra money to send her child to college. And so she came up with this idea of coming up with this collection of poetry, and she got just a variety of poets to submit to it and put it together in a book. And my payment, like most of the payment that I've received for academic publications anyway has been, with copies. I got a free copy of the book, so it wasn't a vanity publication. But then it was picked up again just out of the blue, which was great because I needed a publication around then anyway. So, and then these are just some other places where I was publishing poetry. I was starting to, the Ogeechee Review is one that we actually were publishing here at Georgia Southern. It's no longer being published, but I was starting to get out of that and then starting to get published more in nationally competitive journals. And the one, Sport Literate, there is actually, that's probably my journal with the poetry journal with the widest circulation. I don't know what it is off the top of my head, but it's sold. Last time I checked, it was still being sold at Barnes and Noble, so on the newsstand there. And then there's a few more. So anyway, that's who I am. I'm a writer, and I'm a teacher of writing, and I'm looking forward to working with you and the semester and benefiting from having you benefit from what I know, and I hope I can learn some about what you know about writing and so forth. So I'll see you online.